Hello, it's Rachel, and today I'm going to do an art journal page. I'm working on a loose leaf page that has been pre-gessoed, and now I'm going to add some acrylic paint to that using Paper Artsy Fresco Finish paints. So I'm beginning here with one of the blue colours, and then I'm slowly going to work in some of the lilac shades as well. I don't actually end up using all of the colours that I held up at the start of the video, but generally this is how I'll work. I'll pick up a range of different colours and then add the ones that I feel are necessary or that I'd like to have on the page. So I started off with a dull blue, added some purple, and now I'm adding some of the mint, and then I generally go over those a few times to blend the colours until I'm happy with the effect. Next, I'm going to stamp on the page to start creating my background. Here I'm using two small clear stamps from Prima, and I'm inking those with some archival ink, which is obviously necessary over an acrylic paint background. The dye ink will just come off, it won't dry properly on the background, so you do need a more permanent ink such as archival. And again here I'm starting off with the sky text. I call it sky text, that's not actually its name, but it has the word sky in it, as you might be able to see from here. It's just a kind of jumbled up text that can create quite a nice background. So that was in the blue colour, and then this is in the purple colour, which is a grid effect. So I'm doing some of the stamping first generation, and then the rest of the stamping is in second, third, fourth generation. So we've got a range of different effects on the page. This is a tree stamp by Stampatique, and again I'm using archival ink to stamp over the background, and I do end up stamping this tree twice onto the page. So you'll see here I stamp it once directly onto the page, and then after I finish stamping this I take a piece of plain paper. This is 180 GSM paper, so quite a thickish paper, and I stamp it onto the paper so that I can cut out the main parts of the tree. I don't try and cut out the very tiny details, but once I've cut out the main parts, it means I can colour it without the background interfering with the colour that I'd like the tree to be. I'm applying this to my page using some golden matte medium, which is a very light adhesive. It also means it creates kind of a ground almost like clear gesso, in addition to adhering things to the page. So it will only adhere very light items. If you've got heavier elements, you'd probably want to switch to something like a matte gel medium rather than the liquidy kind of medium like this one. So once I've got this in place, I go over all of it to create that ground, and that means I can add some more colour over the top, and obviously it's going to have a matte finish in keeping with the chalky matte finish of the Fresco paints that I started the page with. And once I've got the tree adhered to the page, I'm taking another piece of the same 180 GSM white paper. It's quite a smooth paper, and I've taken another range of Fresco Finish paints. This time I'm creating a gradient effect with these paints, and it's going to be a cool colour to warm colour effect in this gradient. So I started off with the Baltic blue, which is quite a deep teal kind of blue. Then I'm working into a lighter blue, then a purple colour or a couple of purple colours, and then finally a pink colour to warm up the base of the gradient. And the idea behind this is that I'm going to have hearts hanging from the trees, and they're going to go from a cool colour range to a warm colour range, and that is to do with the quote that I've decided to put on this page. So you're going to see here in a moment that I cut out some heart shapes using a die. This is just a unbranded die that I found on Amazon, and then I'm going to add these little hearts to the tree. Again, I'm going to use the matte medium that I used to put the tree onto the page initially. So I'm just arranging them here in kind of colour order, so that they start at the very top of the tree with the cold colours, the darkest blues going into the lighter blue, then descending into the purple colours, and finally towards the bottom of the tree the pink colours, which are obviously much warmer. And once I've played around with the little hearts and found the ones that I want to use, I'm going to add these again with the matte gel, the matte medium that I used earlier. They're a little fiddly to put down some of these hearts, as you can see here, because the size of them is pretty tiny. So this might not be the kind of page for everybody if you don't particularly have the patience for handling tiny die cuts like this, but it is it's something that I like the effect of, so I do take the time to do things like this. And you'll notice that in addition to putting them at the end of the branches, I've expanded them outside of the branches of the tree, so some of them do look like they're falling down, not attached to the tree. And once I've done this, I took a Posca Paint Pen. This is one of the fine tips in black, and I'm going to add some stripes to the tree just for a more whimsical effect. And this is effect that, if you've seen any of my previous journal pages, I do like the impact and dramatic effect that a black and white striped element in a page actually adds to it. So it's quite whimsical, not meant to be realistic in any way, and obviously it's going to take out some of the elements that are readily stamped onto the tree. I was going to keep some of them, like the little knot holes, but in the end I decided to just go over those with the black and the white pens. So following this stage, I'm going to work my way down the trunk and then onto the branches, and then I'm going to start colouring between the stripes with this pen, the black one, and then also with a white Posca. And with the white Posca, you do tend to have to go over it a couple of times. It is acrylic paint based, so it's the same as using a white acrylic paint really. You could have the same effect with a brush, but this is just an easier way to apply the ink or paint, I guess, because it's in a nib form rather than with a paintbrush, so it is easier to keep your lines neat and where you actually want them. But as I say, you could get the same effect pretty much with black and white acrylic paints and a fine detail paintbrush. Now here I actually stopped the stripes. I wasn't too sure what I was going to do with the very base of the tree, but later on you'll see that I actually added stripes beyond the point where I've stopped here. And I'm also going to add a outline just to cover up those initial stamped lines, which are obviously going to be fainter than the acrylic paint pen, and it just makes it stand out a little bit more than it did, and makes it all a little more cohesive, the stamping and the paper stamped version of the tree that's been pasted over the top of it. And I do go over the grasses as well to make sure that it looks balanced, and obviously the grasses that were initially in the foreground on the stamp become in the foreground again. So here you can see I'm just going over the tiny branches. I don't necessarily go all the way to the end of those branches because you can see some of the lines are extremely thin, but I do extend the lines where I can to keep in line with the black and white theme that I decided for the tree. And whilst you're watching me finish off these branches, this might be a good time to let you know that for all my videos I do have a link in the video description to all the supplies, and I've also got several links that I highlighted on my previous video. Some of them are new links for my social media, so I've got several Instagrams. One of them is just for card making, and there is another one. So Artful Cards is my card making Instagram. Artful Evidence is my mixed media Instagram, which I'm hoping to update. It's not been updated for a while, so that is something that I'm going to get around to now, and now that I'm creating new content. And there is also a buy me a coffee link, so I'd like to take the opportunity and say thank you to the additional people that since my last video have donated as a sign of appreciation of my content using Buy Me a Coffee. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's just a place where you can make a donation. As the name suggests, it's about it's the price of a coffee, really. I think it's like £5. I'm not sure if it appears in other currencies, but I've got it set in English pounds for me. And as I say, it's somewhere you can donate if you do appreciate my content. The other thing I have enabled is super thanks. I'm not really sure how that works, but I think it is another donation type of thing. I do have a feeling though that YouTube take quite a good cut out of those kind of donations, whereas Buy Me a Coffee, I'm not sure they take as much as YouTube do. So anyway, it's not something that's compulsory, but obviously, but something I thought I'd mention. And there's also my Etsy shop, so I do sell prints of my mixed media pieces in my Etsy shop, and a range of other items which I've shown in a previous video. So that is something that I've been working on over the last few years whilst I've been absent from YouTube. But anyway, on with the page then. So now you can see the white pen, and that's just really, it's not really going to add that much more brightness, but it does cover up some of the details that were on the tree that perhaps I didn't want to have anymore because of the black and white effects that I wanted. And now you can see I'm going back to those grasses, adding some of them back into the foreground that had disappeared into the background, creating a little more grass, and obviously extending that bottom line to make it look like the tree is grounded. And at this stage of the page, I felt like the colours were, although I really liked the colours, they were a little on the cold side. So this is Quinacridone Nicolazo Gold by Gold, and it's the fluid acrylic, and just applying quite a diluted amount of this just to warm up some areas of the page. I think you can see the effect that it has. So over the tops of those colours, because it is transparent, it's going to create some warmth. Where it's a little thicker, it's going to create that orangey yellow colour, but in general I'm using it quite thinly and diluted, so it's going to create more of a yellow toned green effect. And as you can see, I'm painting it over the bottom of the tree part there as well, just to add to that grounding. So now I'm taking some die cuts. So I've got this little die cut from Pan, and it's a little bucket with a separate handle, and I've die cut 3 of these. And my idea is that these hearts on the tree are being collected, and as they descend from the tree, they are warmed up. They are turning from the cold blue colours to the pink colours the nearer they get to the bucket where they're being collected. So the little buckets I'm painting with a deep purple, just because I wanted a contrast to the other elements of the page, which are in quite pastel colours. And once these have dried, I do paint the handle as well, just the middle part that looks like it's supposed to be wooden, again in the purple colour, just to keep the colours on the page to a minimum. But I'm going to fill these with some of the additional hearts that I die cut, and here you can see I've added hearts to 2 of them. I'm just adding one of the handles now. They are a little tricky to fit into place. You kind of have to bend the handles just slightly, and I've just put a little bit of glue onto the back of those. I can't remember what I actually used. I don't think it was matte medium. I think it was something a little stronger, because I knew it needed to bend into place. And now I'm just positioning them on the page as though the hearts are being collected from the tree. And again, as I said, it's just the warm ones towards the bottom of the tree, because my idea is that hearts can be warmed up by the people who touch them. not that we have trees of hearts, obviously, but the idea that another person can touch another person's heart in real life and warm it, or yeah, add some warmth to somebody's life. Anyway, the adhesive that I'm using here, because these are heavier elements and the more dimensional, because I've stacked the hearts into those buckets, is a soft gel medium, again by Golden. If you're unfamiliar with how gels work, so you can obviously use them as an adhesive, you can also use them for creating texture. The soft one is a more fluid gel, and it's ideal for light items such as cardstock and paper. But if you've got anything heavier than that, such as resin or metal, you're going to want a regular gel or a heavy gel. Right, so now I'm going to use a Fresco Finish paint again. This is Limelight. It's quite translucent paint, but I did feel that the ground needed more of a green than what it previously got from the golden colour that had been applied, the Nickel Azo Gold. So I actually end up applying a couple of layers of this paint, and it's always better to apply a couple of layers of a thin translucent paint rather than try and get it opaque in one go, because that's going to cause problems and it takes a long time to dry. Then I have my words for the page, so now you'll be able to see where my idea came from. So the idea and the quote kind of came together. I had the idea for the tree, I had the idea for collecting hearts, and then I decided that these words would fit that theme. So breathe warmth into the hearts you collect is about obviously being kind to people and not causing people heartache, but rather the opposite, having people warm to you as a person. And I've printed these on my Brother label maker, and then I did add a layer of matte medium over the top just so that they had a matte finish, because these labels are a gloss surface when you print them off. And now I'm going back to the Posca pen to create a border around the page, and I'm going to have the same kind of black and white theme to this, so that it ties in with the tree that I'd already done and the stripy effect, and it obviously adds a little more drama and contrast to those very pastel colours that we've used for most of the page. So when you're creating a journal page, you do need to think about your choice of colour. Obviously, if you do what you want to do, but if you want something to be pleasing to the eye, you do need to think about, are your colours all washed out? Do you have any contrast in there? What could you actually do to create some contrast, if that's the type of page that you want to have? And more often than not, that's what I look for in a page, to have some contrasting elements, so that it is a more interesting page to look at and it's more pleasing to the eye. And there isn't, there's no reason why you can't combine contrast with pastel colours, because you can see that I'm doing it here. Sometimes you do tend to think that more contrast is developed when you've got the more bold, deep colours, the jewel type colours, but this is an effect that I've been happy with when it's been used in a range of colour schemes. The other thing to bear in mind is black and white doesn't add anything to the page that is overpowering. So the kind of neutral colours, you'll notice on most of the artwork that I do, I tend to have maybe three or four colours maximum, usually three, I would say, and most of them they tend to be in the same family, so that the blue and purple and pink are very, very close to each other. My contrast colour was to add the green, and you'll notice that I put it obviously at the bottom where the grass element is, but also in a dilute version into the background, it just kind of ties things together. Usually if you've got colour in one area of a page, you definitely want to have it in another one as well, just to make things more cohesive. So now I'm going around the hearts, and again this is to do with making things more cohesive. I did feel that they blended into that background a little too much after I'd put the dramatic black and white elements on, so I've gone around the hearts, not with the Posca pen but with a micron pen because it's got a finer nib. The Posca pen, although it's a fine, or described as a fine nib, it's not that fine and it would overpower those smaller hearts. And then just some finishing touches, some little dots that I'm placing around the page here, just add one more area of interest. And once I've finished these, I do the same to the labelled letters, and apart from adding the interest, it's obviously going to make it integrate into the page more, so it doesn't look just as, you know, 3 stuck on stickers. I did go over the text as well. I didn't do that on camera. I used the Posca white pen, so you'll see it's not perfect anymore, and I'm okay with that. Some people are not okay with things that are not absolutely perfect, but it's supposed to look like an art journal page, so if you go over text and it's not perfect, you're probably making it more cohesive. It can look a little clinical and too contrived if you just take lots of stickers and things like that and add them onto something that is mostly a more whimsical, or has a more of a hand doodled look to it. So yeah, I'm fine with the fact that they're not perfect. And now I'm just going over the hearts in the buckets as well, with that same pen. And the other thing I added to the buckets was just some little highlight marks. You'll notice on the left hand side they've now got some white pen. That was the Posca pen that I used. And last element on this page, I added some hearts as though they've either fallen from the tree or fallen out of the buckets, just because I thought it needed a little something in that area of grassland, just to break it up a little bit really. And you'll see here as well that I did finish that tree down to basically to ground level where it wasn't filled in previously. And that is pretty much everything for today's page. I really hope you enjoyed this video. It's been a learning experience for me because I'm editing without music. I'm not sure whether I'll change that. I'm editing with new software on my iPad, so that's been a learning experience as well. I've found out some things that I wasn't particularly fond of, such as the auto zoom in and out that iPad has, that I hadn't actually noticed before, but I've never recorded a full video like this with my iPad. So yeah, hopefully the quality will get better in the future. Well, that's everything for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget there's links in the video description, and I'll see you again soon.